Well, hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Wild Your Garden, and in today's video I have a very special guest who I'm no doubt, Jake, you won't want to be referred to as a special guest, but in my eyes you are. Jake Fiennes is the Director of Conservation here at Hockham Hall, and well, you've kind of spent your life in conservation really, haven't you?
30 years career in land management.
It's not too bad.
It's yeah, interesting start, but wasn't always that case. But yeah, for the last 30 years, doing just about everything you can do on land.
Brilliant. And we're here today on the Hockham Estate, which is one of the largest in England, isn't it? Certainly, it's certainly
the 25,000 acres, and it's the largest in Norfolk, undoubtedly.
Yes, yeah. And we're actually in, I would say, a rather fantastic field at the moment. I don't think I've ever seen this amount of field scabious, and obviously anybody watching this who are used to the content I'm putting out on YouTube, a lot of it is around wildflower meadows, and that's why we've sort of come here. This is just a short.
This meadow is epic.
Well, I didn't want to
just beyond possible anyone's wildest dreams.
It's to me, yeah, I can see that. I mean, you've got species in here that, you know, as a meadow creator, you would dream of. You know, it is really quite special. And there's a rather fabulous little butterfly, isn't there, that's colonising here as we speak, isn't it?
So it is home to one of the largest, probably might be the only, but definitely the largest colony of chalk-gill blues. But what's interesting is the story behind this meadow, because this meadow is relatively new. Little less than 9 years ago, this meadow was in arable cultivation. Wow. So it's amazing. It looks natural.
So for anyone watching this who aren't familiar with that term, what does that mean?
So that means it was growing rape, wheat, barley, maize, sugar beet, potatoes.
Yeah, wow.
It was under deep cultivation. It was applied. We had herbicides and insecticides and artificial fertilizer applied to it, and it was in a traditional farming rotation.
Yeah, brilliant. And now, of course, it's an absolute thriving wildflower wonderland, and it really has got some incredible species. The chalk-gill blue, which we'll come on to in a second, just over there.
On cue.
On cue. Isn't it great when nature does that? Is absolutely thriving. I mean, I've never seen a population of chalk-gill blue like this. I mean, we are talking about quite an expanse. So what size is this field altogether?
So it's approximately 30 acres, about 15 hectares.
Yeah.
It's fully fenced, and it has Enclosure Act hedges. So a lot of the hedges around this field are only about 200 years old, and mainly single species.
Very interesting, yeah. So, and how did you then go about transforming this from, you know, the crops into what it is today?
So before I arrived, this was on its journey of creation, and through some forward-thinking individuals at Natural England said this would be an ideal site. The reason it's the ideal site is because it's next door to an Iron Age hill fort, which
always helps.
Which helps. It's triple SI. It has all of the species that are in this meadow. So it's basically trying to, using the Lawton principles of bigger, better and joined up. It's also adjacent to a chalk stream. Holcombe owns 3% of the world's chalk streams. There's only 280 chalk streams across the globe. So it says it needs to be in nature, but not exclusively nature, because when I arrived, there was a regime of cut and remove, treating it like a traditional hay meadow. But actually the importance of nuance and context and soil type is actually how you want to manage every meadow. You know how you would manage meadows on heavy clay soils as opposed to meadows on chalky soils. So you do a different approach. And traditionally, this area of Norfolk would have been open downland, similar to the South Downs, and it would have been in a grazing regime where historically the sheep would have grazed the lush meadows on the marshes through the summer, and through the winter, where the soils were drier, they would graze the chalk downland. So basically what we've done, I've changed the way the field has been managed from being a cut and remove as per the prescriptions to a field that is much more integrated with some traditional agricultural techniques. And what we've seen by doing that is we've seen an explosion in species diversity. So some of the records of, indicators of success, orchids. We know that orchids want particular soil soil types and soil conditions to thrive.
That's right.
And we had there were some counts of common spotted, early purple, bee orchid and pyramidal, and those counts under the original management prescriptions was about 190.
Okay.
Within 3 years, we have an estimated population of about 1,500 to 2,000.
Wow.
So we see that. See that as an indicator of success. The other thing as an indicator of success, the chalk hill blues are quite exclusive to their food source, and they can be
which is the horseshoe vetch, of course.
Exactly, and they can be in quite tight colonies. So where we have chalk hill blues already existing in the Iron Age fort, what we wanted to see was whether they would migrate into this field.
Sure.
And what we've seen in the last 2 years, and this year specifically, because the weather's been very kind to butterflies.
And the last 30 minutes.
And we've now seen chalk hill blues across this field.
Wow, yeah.
So this is a huge success for nature.
Definitely.
But everything that I'm about is about it's integrating agriculture being the success as opposed to agriculture being the villain of nature.
Which it is often portrayed as, isn't it? Sadly, you know, it's very easy for us to point the finger and say, you know, we've got 74% of our land is agriculture, and you know, it's the demise of our wildlife. You know, it's the wrong attitude to have. There's no point pointing and shouting at someone. You know, if you want to help increase the biodiversity, you know, and help the natural world, we have to work with landowners in a positive way, because
it's a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
The lowest, how are you going to do species recovery? You're going to do it on the land management technique that is widespread, and that's farming.
Yeah.
And every farm in every parish, in every county, in every country has the ability to make space for nature.
Yeah.
And at different levels. You know, we can still produce food alongside nature, and some farmers will go very nature heavy, and some farmers will just put a token effort for nature. And by doing that, we then create connectivity, and that's the key. So this is an example of connectivity adjacent to the Iron Age hill fort is just a small token of what's possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, hats off to you guys, because it really is working. So how do you go about managing this site and making it financially viable then, if you are using the sheep and you're not doing a traditional cut and collect and selling the bales of hay, which is as of course how most people would see wildflower meadows to be managed?
So in current agriculture, every farmer in England receives money or subsidy or support for every hectare of land they occupy. We're currently going through a transition, but if you work on an average of about £200 a hectare before transition. Additionally to that, there are payments for environmental improvements, ecosystem services, and there are schemes that farmers can enter into which deliver meadows like this. So Holcombe Estate entered into that scheme, so they get two incomes. Additionally to that, well, prior to me arriving, when they were cutting and collecting, they're cutting and collecting a product that is of no benefit and no use to them. So it's basically crap hay.
Because it's such a fine sward, isn't it? Because if you look behind us, we've got these, you can see the soil types, this lovely chalk, which is obviously the wildflowers dream situation, but it means that everything is low growing and there's not a lot of fertility to encourage a lot of growth, is there?
So to maintain it in agriculture, we bring sheep in, and we bring sheep in not by dates. We can't farm by dates. So when we think that the flowers have all finished and the butterflies have all bred and the birds have finished breeding, we then turn the sheep in, and that can be any time from October through to December. And we will graze them according to the summer's growth. So this year, no rain.
That's right.
And the sheep will probably be turned in fairly late, and I think they will probably have munched through all the stalks and whatever little grass is here in about 6 to 8 weeks. Every year is different. Some years it can be 16 to 26 weeks. And then there might be a light top, because I don't want to encourage shrubby growth, because it's a meadow.
Which is just the tractor going through with a topper on the back and just mowing, basically, just to reduce the vegetation.
Yeah, very quick operation, just to tidy it up. We have brambles growing adjacent to the hedges, so it's trying to maintain and check those. Not removing them in totality, but just stopping them from spreading.
Sure.
And it seems to work. Sorry, just heard a skylark right above my head.
Yeah, quite. So case in point. And it's a brilliant way of chalk-hill blue. Typically, we've been spending the last hour, haven't we, trying to photograph them, and they just seem to be taking the what's out of them.
They're not being very accommodating.
No, that's right. Yeah. But it's fascinating for me to see this on a commercial scale, because of course I go around the country creating wildflower meadows in a domestic setting where the maintenance, obviously most of them are between 1/2 acre and 2 acres, so some of them are manageable by hand, some of them I go in and I actually physically using the agri mowers, cut and collect at different times of year. But it's very interesting for me coming here today to see this agricultural scale management, and the successes are phenomenal.
So we can all do our bit.
Yeah.
So whether we've got a small bit of grass in our urban garden, whether we've lucky enough to have 2 acres of meadow that employs your services to create something really special, or whether we do it at scale, and whether we do it at scale to demonstrate to people what's possible. And also, so areas of public access, areas that can be seen from the train. There's multiple ways you can engage people with the natural world, and we all have an ability to do it at what we feel comfortable with.
Yeah, of course. And I think it's wonderful, as you say, to adopt those principles. But I mean, okay, it's not as easy as putting horseshoe vetch in a back garden. You can't expect the chalk-hill blue, which is a very specialist butterfly, to then enter your garden unless you back onto an Iron Age hill fawn. But for me, there are certain things, and obviously people watching this can do to encourage the more common species. Things such as the common blue, which are here today again. Planting birdfoot trefoil in your garden. The amount of gardens that have had that come in since I've planted those sorts of plants. So nature, I think, really can start on our doorstep, but we all need to be opening our minds as to how we need to be managing it on a landscape scale, because butterflies like the chalk-hill blue, they need these habitats. They need, they will simply be lost if we were to just plough this field up.
So the wonderful thing about nature is it's all interlinked.
Yeah.
So the importance of food plants for certain butterflies, and each butterfly has its own particular taste. Chalk-hill blue, common blue, large blue, small tortoiseshell. They all have food plants and when designing a meadow, I think first and foremost you look at what species are going to thrive, and then having a range of plants that flower all the way through the summer. And calcareous short grassland is unique. It is amazingly drought tolerant, and it flowers quite late. Most of the meadows, most of the hay meadows, specifically in the south, in the southwest, and in the north, probably have all gone over. We're now the first week in August. Most of them have gone over. This is in its full glory,
bloom, isn't it? You've got marjoram, small scabious, field scabious. There's tons of stuff everywhere, and it's just incredible, and it's buzzing. I've not walked for more than a metre without having a bee whiz past my ear. I know we're slightly biased towards the butterflies, or I certainly am, but we've got to think about all of the pollinating insects as well, because without them, a lot of the bees as well, hoverflies, flies, without all these insects, moths as well, we really will struggle to pollinate a lot of our crops, won't we?
We will, but some of the majority of our crops are pollinated by the wind.
Of course,
so cereals actually don't require pollinators. But if we look at apples and we look at beans and peas, really important for pollinators to have them. And a recent study by the Centre for Hydrology and Ecology has just done a 10-year study and have published a paper this week that says that actually making space for nature within our agricultural landscapes does not impact average yield, and actually can provide benefits for the farm and food systems.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I find it fascinating, Jake. I could stand here all day and talk to you about it, but I'm very conscious you're a busy man. You've got a lot of stuff to do, and so I'd love to, if it's possible, come back, get some proper time with you next year, talk a bit more about what you've done through your life, which I know you won't appreciate too much, but I think a lot of people would appreciate hearing it. And also, you know, some more of the work that Hockham is doing as a pioneering industry, I think.
So 25,000 acres with a varied landscape, doing lots of different things, catering for multiple species, producing food, 1 million visitors a year, challenges with dogs on the beach. So and the summertime, early spring, May, June is when Holcombe is at its best.
We'll have to get something in the diary then. Yeah, brilliant. And for anybody watching, I'm Jake, I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning. Land Healer, Jake's book, is a really good read, very interesting about all this kind of stuff. If you want to read more into it, which I think we all should, we all need to know where our crops are coming from and how the land is being managed outside of our towns, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
There you go, yeah. So Jake, thank you very much. Pleasure. And
you.
hopefully we can get something in the diary for next year. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. Please feel free to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Give the video a like, and I'm sure I'll be back next year to bring you more fascinating stuff at the Hockham Estate. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon.